This is another Poets at War General Report. And here's your General, Joshua David Ling.
Good luck.
A good morning to me and those around me, physically and in time, and good whatever, good day to you all. Good day, good evening. So it is the 24th of Saturday, and I am likely, if you're watching this now, actually either on my way or at the Fight, Laugh, Feast conference, getting things going with that. We're maybe working some cameras, you know how it goes. But it's been a really, really fun time doing what we do here and getting to record a few extra of these ahead of time. I'm able to do this and go to places like Fight, Laugh, Feast thanks to the contributions of viewers like you and others. The easiest way that you can help out with the reawakening of epic poetry and all that entails is to go to joshuadavidling.com/support. And I have a whole bunch of different ways you can give. Just pick one and we'll rock and roll from there. So with that being said, today I'm going to be talking about something that I did for a long time called Efedding. And that is a very interesting topic. I'm going to do a larger one on pro wrestling in general at some time. But professional wrestling is one of those forms of storytelling that often gets overlooked because it's... it kind of has a magician's quality to it where they try to fake you out, but not in a way that you don't already know. A lot of people act like, it's still the 1950s or whatever, where they're actually trying to pawn it off as real. That's not the case anymore. Hasn't been for quite some time. But they are stories. They are storytelling. They are serial, and most of the time it's not great. But there are some amazing moments in professional wrestling, and adding in the athleticism and the over-the-top superhero-like characters, it can be a really fun thing. I was actually trained in pro wrestling for a little while, but that's going beyond the scope of what we're talking about. The main thing I want to get to is something called Efedding, which is a really geeky thing. It is something that sprang up around the time of message boards and the like back in, early 2000s is kind of when it started, maybe late 90s. But the idea and the concept is a fantasy role-playing game based in the world of professional wrestling. And I wanted to get into it specifically because I think it's one of the most amazing creative writing games to ever exist, and how it might be adapted for other forms of role-playing game. Obviously, one of the benefits of role-playing games, especially in the realm of creative writing, is to sharpen your skills. And I'd love to get something like this going, maybe with the Brood sometime, when I have time, when we have time, whatever. But I think it would be really, really fun. Essentially, this is the way Efedding works, and there's variations within the formula, but most of the time it comes down to this: you pick or create a professional wrestler. You are then added to a roster, and every week you're given an opponent. Now you have usually about a week to, and there's, like I said, variations on time, but you are given about a week to create a promo of some kind, and some of them they consider this creative written promo to be more, some want it to be more like a monologue, some people want it to be more like a character movie and you're writing a script on your wrestler and why they're going to beat the other wrestler, and creating interest in your character. So it can be just about anything, right? Now, some federations are a little bit more, specific about, they want you to do either a monologue, or they really want that character development, or, there's certain things that you can and can't do within your, what they call promo. But, like I said, it varies. Well, basically, your opponent does one as well, and when the day of the event comes, the person who is the Fed head, the person who is running the game, the dungeon master, if in D&D terms, then takes those and looks at them and essentially rates them on whatever his subjective scale is for these sorts of things. And whoever wins that competition wins their match. And the Fed head will actually write out a full show of matches for the participants. As you can imagine, this gets a little bit unscalable at certain points when you have lots and lots of participants. Unless you have a really, really prolific writer as the Fed head, things tend to break down. And that's one of the only drawbacks of the process. But I actually did e-fedding from somewhere around 2006. About 2006 up until probably close to around 2012 or so, off and on. And I made some really amazing friends. I have a friend who I'm still in contact with on occasion who lives up north, and he actually came to Christ through our contact and our role playing together. We role played outside of the Fed. We tried to develop our characters and, sharpen one another's skills. And it was a lot of fun. And it was a lot of early skill work for me to sharpen my craft in writing. And it helped me learn that I love poetry too. So with that being said, I think that this is one of those forms that even if you're not a pro wrestling fan, that you could take something from it and create something even more exciting for whatever you're into, whether it be sci-fi, fantasy, etc. But you really got to kind of get creative in how to do it, because the nature of professional wrestling is that it's a weekly show. We know that no one's going to die unless you want your Fed head to get really crazy and write someone off the show. But generally speaking, it has certain parameters that lend itself to this form. Fantasy is a little bit tougher, but what I would suggest, and this is just a suggestion, you can do it however you want, is essentially doing sort of a great race version of a quest for some special medieval object like a holy grail, right? So basically you have your character, you create your character, you get added to the roster, so to speak, and all these characters are going after the one Highlander sword, whatever you want to call it, right? They're going after the one thing that is going to win the game, so to speak. Now, this necessitates this being sort of a one-shot story, but it's something that you can draw out as long as you want. So, and there could be other prizes along the way. You can do other sorts of, magical artifacts and things that people will win, and they have a battle. But the idea is that the Fed head actually keeps a linear spacing ranking, so to speak, of how far along the quest each of these individual characters are, and he will essentially award them distance points toward the goal based upon their promo, whatever we want to call it, their journal log, right? Whatever you want to call it. So basically, this lets you create a really interesting character, make it as interesting as possible, as exciting as possible, and the characters can meet at various points along the way and have a battle to try and hold back the other one or stop the other one from continuing on the quest. Or they might end up working together. That's something that doesn't really happen a whole lot in Efeds unless it's a situation where two people, become so, they so respect one another's skills that they become a tag team and they go on a different route. You know what I mean? And I see no problem with essentially creating parties within the system, right? Creating groups of characters that are working together toward the quest. Now, obviously, that breaks down after a while, and you need some semblance of good and bad characters and stuff to keep things from becoming one homogenous group moving toward the goal. But it's an interesting idea nonetheless. And as someone who really has a major distaste for the math involved in much fantasy role playing, I think that it's a way that we can use our creative skills and our literary skills to create a much more exciting format. And there's a lot of other ways to do exciting formats and stuff. And there's a certain amount where math can be exciting, the idea of chance being thrown into it and whatnot. But, you know, you could implement that in your subjective scoring system, right? You have all these a little bit more objective kind of things, like, you know, your craft, how well it was written, etc. And then you get a little more subjective with like how I think of it, how I receive it as a person reviewing this character. And then you, on top of that, you can add, you know, a little D10, D20 dice roll to your system and throw a little spice into the mix, right? A little bit of luck, as they would call it, whatever you want to, whatever, however you want to, blessings of the gods, whatever, or God, whatever. So there's lots of options there. And I think that this form has a lot more potential than where it was sort of pigeonholed in professional wrestling. I think it's really interesting that it sprung up around professional wrestling, and then it hasn't really gotten much further in other places. So I leave that to you. Most of my friends now are more into the fantasy sci-fi sort of camp than the pro wrestling camp. That wasn't by design. It's just sort of happened over the years. I've always been more into story, even in the realm of professional wrestling, even though I like really good top-notch matches and technically sound things and whatever else. I was always into the characters and what they were thinking and what they were going through and what their arcs were and all this other sort of stuff. And so it's an interesting intersection of geekery that I'd love to hear more thoughts from you. You can text me over there. See that? Text me, call me, talk to me. What's going on? Tell me what your thoughts are on e-fetting. Would you want to do something like this within, you know, our little community? Or is it something that just sounds ridiculous? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, do not, be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We will see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War.
God of songs.